Hello, my name is Nigel Bowden and I'm the author of the book MikroTik Scripting, and I'd like to welcome you to lesson number 5 in our series of videos where we're looking at the world of MikroTik scripting. Just a reminder that the book is available in both paperback and ebook formats from Amazon, so maybe you'd like to check it out. There's plenty more in there that covers all of the topics in this video series plus plenty more. Okay, so in this particular lesson we're going to follow on from our previous lessons where we've been creating a number of probes. Each probe is a script, and it gives us a whole variety of features that we're going to feed into a Telegram reporting system. So in this particular lesson we're going to review the solution overview, the whole solution that we're building, the Telegram reporting solution. Then we're actually going to have a quick look at what the requirements are of this particular script, do some code creation and code testing, similar format to what we've done previously, and just a very quick reminder of what the end-to-end final solution will look like when we've built all of our scripts. You can see on the left here we've got the three green icons here for the 3 probe scripts, and we've already previously built the interface utilization probe, the temperature checker probe, and this time we're going to be building the web monitor probe, which is another script that will be run from the scheduler. And as with the other scripts that we've built, it'll feed any alerts into the Telegram queue global variable. If any of this doesn't make too much sense, it's probably worth actually going back and checking out some of the previous videos that we've done. There'll also be a final script which will be in the next lesson, which actually correlates any alerts that we've got, and we'll send those alerts across onto the Telegram cloud service, which will ping in an alert onto a device that you've got Telegram installed onto. So as usual, same sort of development workflow. We'll be creating the script on my local development machine. We'll be then pushing it, we'll be deploying it to the MikroTik. We'll be running it on the MikroTik to make sure it behaves as we expect, and then we'll do a little bit of debugging if we run into any issues. So this particular script, what have we got to do? This one we're going to actually build a small list of website addresses, and we're going to check to see each of those websites is available. So this could be useful if you've got some particular websites that you always need to be available for your users, and you just maybe want to just test them periodically to see if they are up and available. And what will happen is it'll step through each of the websites which we specify in our list, provide an error message if they're not available, pop that into the system log, and it'll also push it into the Telegram queue global variable to be to create an alert for our Telegram reporting script later on. In terms of, this one will be run from the scheduler as well, but in terms of where we get the data from, in this particular instance we're using another router OS command. We're using the /tool fetch command, and what that will do, that will actually pull a particular URL which we specify in the on-screen example. It's pulling the google.com website, but we will obviously substitute this out for each of the websites which you specify in the list, and it'll sort of iteratively go over the list and try and try and pull the web page from each of the sites that we specify. And if it works, then great, we don't need to do anything else. But if there's a problem retrieving the web page, then it will actually generate an alert for us. And this one will again be run from the MikroTik scheduler, and this time it'll be a script called webmonitor.rsc. So hopefully that's all fairly straightforward based on what we've seen previously. So we can go straight into our coding demo this time. But just before we jump into VSC and start creating the code, I just wanted to cover off a couple of concepts that we need to have as sort of background before we start coding. I think it just makes the whole coding experience when you're watching it a little bit smoother if you already understand some of these sort of background concepts. So we're going to move across to our old friend Winbox, and I'm just going to make I'm going to run some commands on the command line here. So there we go, we have that running there. So what I'm going to do is just cover off a couple of the commands that we're going to be using. So let me just do a little copy and paste for you to make sure I don't get any typos. So the first thing we're going to look at is the /tool fetch command. So I'll paste that in here. So you can see we're actually going to output using the put command, as we've done many times before, and we're going to collect the output of the /tool fetch command. And in this case, we're going to be actually pulling back the web page from the MikroTikScripting.com website, which is my website, where you can find all the details about the book and code samples, etc. And you can see, as usual, we've wrapped the command in a pair of square brackets so that we can feed the output of that command into the put command. So if I just hit carriage return on that one, then you can see there's a slight delay, and then we actually get a set of results returned. And in this case, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 parameters which are returned, which give us some idea about the health of the website and how long it took to load the page. The particular field that we're interested in to determine whether or not we've been successful is this status field here. And so that's the one we're going to be focusing on to determine whether or not we've been successful, or maybe the website hasn't loaded correctly for some reason. This result, which is returned to us here, which I'm just highlighting now, this is actually an array. So this is a list of values that are returned, and we can actually, using our the syntax we've seen previously to recover array values, we can pull out just the status message that we're interested in. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just give it a little demonstration of that. So what we'll do, we'll actually run the command again, but this time we'll actually assign the output to a variable. So I'll just run that quickly. Oh, I'm having a little problem copying and pasting there, so I'll copy that and paste, and I'll hit return. And we will see, you see down in our in the global variables, down in the script list window down here, we've now got this temp variable created. It's a global variable. So now what we actually want to do is we actually just want to pull out the status field here. So we'll use our use the syntax we've looked at previously for extracting values from an array, and I will paste. I seem to be having real problems with my copying and pasting today. Let me give it another go. Paste that in there, and if I hit return there, you can see, because we've actually we've basically extracted the value of the temp variable, which is an array, and then we've pulled out just the individual field which we're interested in, which has got the name status. And you can see, because we've done that, we've actually got the value of finished. So by inspecting this value in our script, we'll be able to tell whether or not we've been able to load the page successfully and whether or not it's available. So hopefully that's all fairly straightforward, and it'll save me having to explain it when we get around to our coding piece in a few moments. Just one other one area I wanted to cover was we've previously used the log command quite a few times previously. I'll just make my terminal window a little bit smaller, and I've sort of glossed over this fairly quickly, but I just wanted to make sure it was fairly obvious what's going on with this. So if I hit the just type in the log command, we've got a number of different logging levels that we can use to put a message into the log window over here, and we can tie this up to a syslogging system and log this maybe to an external server if that's what we want to do with it. So, but we've got different logging levels we can use. So if I put the keyword info and then put hello, we can see in the log window, we can see we get the message hello, and it's just in normal black text. It doesn't sort of doesn't indicate any sort of urgency or particular problem. So just for informational messages really. But if we want to make things a little bit more urgent, then we can actually change that from info to warn and run it again, and you can see now we've got these blue we get blue text now, which is indicating that things may be a little bit more serious than just a standard informational message. And then we can change it to error, and that should give us some red text. So there we go. That just shows that we've got a little bit more of an urgent problem. And if you're familiar with syslog and have used syslog systems before, this will be fairly familiar. The different logging levels which are available within syslog correspond to these keywords or sort of these parameters of info, warn and error. So just thought I'd tidy that one up, and I've just remembered there was actually one other topic which we're going to cover in our script, and I think I'll just run over this very briefly. In this particular script, we're going to be using a new loop type which we haven't met before. We've used the for loop in one of our previous scripts, but this time we're actually going to be using a for each loop, which is very similar to the for loop, but instead of counting over a series of values, so if you remember back to the for loop, we say for, and then we say from, a value of 1 to a value of 10. Let's do this loop 10 times and execute a series of commands. With the for each, what we do is we actually specify an array for the for each loop to iterate over. So we basically say for each, pass it an array value, and then for each value in that array, it will execute values within a pair of curly braces, as we did for the for loop. So let's have a look at an example of that, rather than trying to explain everything about it verbally, because I think it makes a lot more sense when we've got an example to look at. So what we're going to do in this case, we're going to create an array called colors, and we've created that with the values red, blue and green. Okay, so we'll just carriage return there, and you can see we've got colors in our global variable table down there. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a very, very simple for each loop, and I'll just paste that into there. And before I hit return on that one, I'll just explain what's going on. So we've got for each, and this is very similar to the for loop as I mentioned before. And then what we create a variable here called color, and this is one of those special variables like we had in the for loop. This variable only exists within the confines of the code block in the do code block. So once we've executed this for each loop, the variable color, it completely goes away. We can only reference it within the code block. The next thing we do then is we've got this in parameter here, and what we do is we actually pass it an array. Okay, so in this case we've created an array called colors, so we just pass the value of the variable colors, and then we've got this final do block here. So this is what we actually do when we're iterating over the loop. We actually, in this case, are doing something very simple. We're just doing a put, and then the current value of the variable color. So what we're expecting to happen here is that we will step through each of the members of this array and print it out there. I've done this on one line. This is a sort of single line example just to keep things nice and easy, but as we saw with the for loop, you can have a multi-line version of this, and the do block would be spread out over multiple lines, and we'll see more about that when we're doing our actual live example. Okay, so if I just hit return on this, there you can see it's actually stepped over each of the values in the array colors and printed them out as we expect. So hopefully that's give you a good background on that, so that we don't need to focus too much on that when we're doing our live coding. Okay, so I'm just going to tidy up these global variables here. There we go. Okay, so it's time now to get into our coding demo. So I'm just going to click on VSC, if I can switch to the correct window. And we've got our usual setup here. We've actually got we're in the same development folder as before, MikroTik scripts. We've already got our two previous probe scripts which we've created, and you can see we've got my usual SSH window at the bottom here, and then we'll be creating our new scripts here in the main panel on the right. So let's create ourselves a new script, and this one's going to be called web-monitor.rsc. okay, and then we can start typing in our commands, and as before I'm actually going to copy and paste from a pre-prepared script just to keep things nice and accurate. So I'm just going to paste in first block of code, and a lot of this is very similar to what we've done previously, so I won't spend too much time on this particular area. So usual thing, we've got some details about what the script does. We've got our debug flag again, so we can switch debugging on and off. We've got our usual Telegram queue variable where all of our alert messages will be posted. we've got our debugging function, which we covered in quite a bit of detail in the last video, so I'm not going to cover that again now. So that just sort of gives us our introductory statements, and so then we move on to having a look at, well, what are the sites we'd actually like to test to make sure they're available. So what we actually do in this particular case is we define an array called websites here, and you can see between the curly braces here, which indicate this is an array, we've added MikroTikScripting.com, Google.com, Facebook and eBay. And what we will do is we'll step through each of these and just do a quick test to make sure they're available, and raise an alert if they're not. So the first thing I do is a call to our debug function. If debugging is enabled, we'll get a little message to say, right, we're underway, we're starting to monitor, starting to run the monitor tests. And the next section I'm going to paste in is the sort of main body of the script. So I'm going to post it all in one big chunk, and we'll analyze it one step at a time. Okay, so here we go. So before we got to this statement here, where we did our initial debug function. So the thing we're going to do next is we're actually going to start stepping through the list of websites that we've created and testing it. So you can see we start off with this Foreach loop here, and very much like the example I showed before, in this case we're using a variable called site to indicate which site we're actually going to be testing. The websites variable here is the array we created earlier. I'll just scroll up and you can see we've got this array here, websites, which we're referring to here. And then we actually have our code block that we're going to execute for each iteration of the loop, which starts with the do here, and that ends all the way down here on line 39. Okay, so this is our main loop where we're going to be testing websites. So start off with a quick message to say we're testing website $website, whatever it is for this particular iteration. Okay, so that'll print out the name of the website we're testing. We actually then create a local variable called fetch result, and when we actually run the tool fetch command, this is where we'll put the array which results from the fetch attempt. Okay, so the next thing that we actually do on the line here, this is the sort of the main part of the test where we actually try to get the website itself. So just to analyze this a little bit, we're running the tool fetch command, and we'll actually be pulling back the current site, which is specified by the site variable here. So that will be MikroTikScripting.com for the first cycle, then it'll be Google.com, Facebook.com, eBay.com. So for each loop we'll have a different value substituted in here, and whatever the result of this particular command is, because we can see we've got the square brackets which we use to output the result of a command operation, that will be assigned to fetch result, which, if things have all gone well, will be an array value. Okay, we just then run a couple of debug messages so we can see what's going on if we want to run some type of debugging. There's a slightly new concept here. In this particular instance, we're running the toString command, TOSTR, and what this does, it will convert whatever the contents of this particular value is, which is the result of us trying to fetch the web page, and it's normally in an array format, and we actually, to print it out, we actually would like it in a string format. It just gives a better formatting. So what we've actually done then, we'll get the result, turn it into a string, so it will be an array, turn it into a string, and then we actually will concatenate it with a string that says, this is what the fetch data is. And if you remember from our previous examples, this little dot here is used to join strings. So we'll join the fetch data string here, and then the output of the fetch result variable there. We do the same thing on the next line again, but this time, instead of printing out the value of the whole array, we actually pull out that status message, which is the all-important message that we need to check whether or not we've been successful in getting the website and saying whether it's available. So what we then do, we've got all of the information that we need to make a determination as to whether the website's available. So what we will do then is we actually use one of our standard if statements, which we've seen previously, so I won't go over that again. So we'll actually check what the value of the status field in the result array is. And if it isn't the word finished, and you saw before when we were successfully getting the websites, we got the status of finished. If it's not finished, so this means if it's not equal to finished, then we need to do a number of tasks which will indicate that there's been a problem, and log an alert ready for us to alert into the logging system and ultimately into our Telegram reporter. So the first thing that we do is we create a local alert message, which we're going to use for our alerting purposes. And what we do is we just say we've had a problem loading this particular site, which uses the site variable we've spoken about before. We actually then join whatever that alert message is onto the current value of the Telegram queue global variable, and we've covered all of this in the previous couple of videos, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. So we add in the alert message to the queue. We then actually put a message into the logging system, and we're going to make it a warning level message. You could set that to whatever you like. You could maybe make it an error if you were more concerned about it. And then finally, we use our debugging function. So if debugging is enabled, we'll also be able to see an output of the alert message. We've also got a slight modification to the if statement compared to what we've seen previously. Previously, we've just had a straight if statement. We've had a do block, and then we just, if a condition is true, then we will do the block of code. There's actually a slight variation to the if command, which is quite useful. We can have what's called an else statement. So this sort of extends the if command, if you like. So if a particular scenario is true, then we do this initial code block. So we basically do this first code block here if the condition is true. Otherwise, or else, if it's not true, then we'll do whatever is in this second code block down here. And in this case, if we haven't had a failure, then we'll hit this else branch down here, and we'll just log or debug a message into our debugging system to say, yeah, actually this test was successful. And it's just a sort of confidence check that everything has run okay. It'll be useful for when we're running our debugging. So that's how we actually get we retrieve the web page and verify that the whole operation was successful. We've just got a couple more commands and then we're all done. I'm just going to copy those. So as we've created a couple of global variables, always like to tidy those up. We don't want them hanging around in the global namespace. So we've just got two commands here where we're just doing a set debug and set debug func, which will basically clear those two variables so that they no longer exist. Okay, so we are pretty much done with this. I think if I just hit save now, we've noticed we've got debugging set to true, by the way. So when we run this, we should see the output of it, which is going to be useful. Okay, so that's I've saved that and that's been uploaded. So what we'll do now is we'll have a go at running that and see how we get on. I'll just make my terminal window a little bit bigger. There we go. So I'll do /import and it's web. There we go. So here we go. Let's see how we get on. Okay, so you can see from the output, I'll just let that run through, and we can see if we analyze the debugging information, everything's looking pretty good. You can see we're starting the tests here. We're actually pulling the MikroTikScripting.com website. We can see if we look at the raw data of the array that's returned, we can see we've got a status message of finished, and we actually just confirm that by the debug statement where we extract the value of finished. And then we just say, yeah, we got a successful test for that, so we're good to go. And you can see it does the same for all of the 4 entries within our list. So this is looking pretty good. This is quite a nice set of tests to do a confidence check as to whether websites that we're interested in are available. And a slight caveat, really, I think this is one of those scripts where you have to be a little bit responsible. It would obviously be very easy to add this to the scheduler and do some crazy things in terms of hitting websites, and that's just not cool. So don't use this to hit websites hard. Maybe run it once every 15 minutes, half hour, whatever. But just a bit of responsibility required with this one. So there's one slight snag with this particular script as it stands, and we'll probably have to do a second video where I'll cover how we fix this. So although it runs okay at the moment while all of the websites are available, we do hit a problem if one of the websites is no longer available. So I'll just demonstrate that now. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go back onto my MikroTik here, and I have a firewall rule which will block the MikroTik scripting site. So when we try to retrieve MikroTik scripting site, it should fail. So let's run our script again and see what happens. So this time we will run it again. Here we go. So it's trying to get the MikroTik scripting site. It's going to fail. It takes a few seconds to fail, to time out. Okay, just waiting for that. It's taking quite a... There we go. And we can see it's failed, saying there's a connection timeout, which is perfectly valid. But the problem is the whole script has exited. It hasn't continued to test the other sites. The desired behavior is for it to detect that there's a problem and to then continue with the other sites, and we just want to report the alert for the site which has failed. And the reason that this has failed is that if we go back to the code itself, whenever you're using this tool fetch command, and there are quite a few other commands as well, if something unexpected happens and the command returns an error condition, then the error condition just causes the whole script to exit, which is not what we want in all cases. In some cases it may be, but in this case we just want to register the fact that there's been a problem and that we want to carry on testing other sites. So we need to do a little bit of additional code to sort of trap this error and survive the error and for the script to continue running. So this video is running a little bit long, so I'll make part 2 of this video where we'll actually cover how we trap that event, and we will then be able to continue with the script running for all 4 sites and just reporting an error for the one that's failed. Okay, so I hope this has been useful, and I shall join you again soon and give you part 2 of this video where we'll finalize this solution and see it all running as expected. Okay, thanks for joining me. I'll speak to you all again soon. Bye for now.